This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. This is Johnny Bluestar back on Threshold Radio with songwriters Zave Nathan and Bonnie Blazak. They are blessed as a married couple, but also as creative, collaborative partners in life and art. And as those of you have heard on our first hour, they are not afraid of putting their own 2 cents as to what is really happening here on planet Earth. Believe me, we're going to dig even deeper in this hour. I think they would agree with me that although we can always listen to people who have spent years formulating their view of the world and can marvelously articulated, it is up to us to do our own research and come to our own opinions. I have found many of Zave and Blaze's ideas provocative, and Zave has put me to work trying to validate some of his ideas, and they are truly interesting, if not more than a bit scary. Okay, well, now I'm not saying this is true, but I don't know myself. But another part of the problem is described by investigators and scientists outside of the mainstream media is the claim that certain aspects of our climate are being manipulated, like the drought in California.
Absolutely.
What do you think of that?
Absolutely. That's from the chemtrails. It's causing the drought.
Well, I'm talking about manipulating weather.
Yes.
Oh, since the 60s it's been going on.
Since the 60s. That's HAARP, HAARP. It's a government agency that...
Yeah, go ahead.
It controls the weather globally. And when they spray this particulate in the air, it grabs moisture and suspends it so that it cannot rain. It holds it in suspension, and so it doesn't form normal clouds. You'll notice that the skies don't look anything the way they used to look. It's rare to have a day where you have big fluffy clouds. There are striations across the sky that dissipate over time and, become this plasma mass in the air, which they can then manipulate. And they can send frequencies into it to make it turn into a tornado. They have taken over the weather. There's not much natural weather left anymore. So they keep it from raining purposefully. This drought is man-made. I am absolutely convinced of that. And I live here, so...
there are many aspects of the financing of the health needs of this country through single-payer or conventional insurance or some kind of strange hybrid like Obamacare. These are the different proposals that are presented to us. But for me, the problem is big pharma and the food industry. Who wants to worry about financing healthcare when one of the fundamental causes of ill health is the fact that our food is genetically manipulated without appropriate testing, poisoned by chemicals, hormones, pesticides, antibiotics, and relentlessly packaged, advertised, and sold without taking this serious problem into much consideration. So a lot of time, pharmaceuticals are just a way to cover up the symptoms from nutritional insufficiency and being poisoned, of course. That's my opinion. Do you agree?
Remember this, people out there. You are what you eat. And even though it might sound simplified, you really are what you eat. Number one, every day you need to eat because this is where you get your energy for life. So whatever you ingest will feed every cell of your body. Can we agree on this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So depending on what you put in your body will react to what you feed it. So if you feed your body non-natural, artificial products, your body cannot process it. Our computer, our DNA cannot process chemical products in our cells. Now, where do these products go once we ingest them? Where do they go? They go nowhere. They are stuck in our cells, they are stuck in our fat, they are stuck in our bellies, they are stuck in our butts, they are stuck in our fibers, muscles, they are stuck in our brains. They don't go anywhere because we don't know how to process them. The body doesn't know how to process them. Now look around the American population. And you will see that 70% of the men, 65% of the men are obese, and 75% of the women are obese. And this is why. Because they've been eating products that their bodies cannot process. And over time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of this, you become a balloon. And you cannot lose it because of your lifestyle, because of the roots, because of the cultural input. For instance, if you go to Chinese food, if you go to a Chinese restaurant, they all serve the same stuff. If you go to Mexican food, it's all the same stuff. If you go to French food, well, it's not, the French food is a very sophisticated cuisine, which not necessarily is healthy either. But if you go in Italy, you got, so by culture, they developed the way they eat and what they eat. And this is inherent to their immediate culture and immediate agriculture. Now, if in America, you have in the Midwest enormous land that grow corn. If the corn is pure, the corn will feed humans and animals. If the corn is GMO corn, it will feed animal and humans. But all the chemistry and all the chemical and declination of food products that is coming from this artificial corn, like the biggest one is corn syrup. And if you look in the packaged food in America, 95% of them is made with artificial corn syrup base. And this is destroying a whole culture and a whole population. Everything that you eat at the store that is packaged has to be processed. It has to have artificial products for preservation, coloring, taste. And once you ingest it, MSG, for instance, that stands for what?
Monosodium glutamate.
Monosodium glutamate, MSG, is a chemical that once it hits your brain, it deletes the sense of, I have enough to eat. You're always hungry and you always want to eat more than what you just ate. So look at the size of the butts and the guts of people in those. It is. I'm from Paris. My mom raised me home-cooked meal from scratch. My wife cooks us from scratch. We don't buy or consume absolutely zero packaged food. We have a water filter. We have access to organic food from other farmers around where we live. This is a reason why we left Los Angeles to live in the countryside. And we sleep well. We feel well. We're in good shape. We take zero medication. I don't use the medical system. She doesn't either. We are completely odd ducks living in a parallel lifestyle.
And it's not easy to do.
It's not. But
it's not easy to learn, and it's not easy to process, especially depending on where you are. That you can get, and the cost of organic fruits and vegetables could be quite high.
Not bad here. Not bad at all.
You'd be surprised. I have a neighbor who's a lovely lady. She's got 5 kids. She's 42. She showed me a picture of herself when she was 20 years old. She was like a knockout supermodel status. And, you have 5 children and you eat packaged food for 20 years. And she's like 40 pounds overweight.
And she started diabetes now.
She has started to get the symptoms of the onset of diabetes. And I've been trying to tell her for a couple of years now, because she'll come over to visit me and I'm always cooking something. And she'll go, oh, what's that? What's that? Oh, I never saw that before, and I tried to educate her without being insulting. You don't want to tell people, wow, look at you, you're fat and you're eating garbage, So I tried to tell her and she never tried. I said, you're a stay-at-home mom. 4 of your kids live with your ex and you only have 1 baby at home. You can cook. And she just never did it. So now that she knows that she's got diabetes on her over her right shoulder, she's finally starting to think about doing it another way. But she spends a fortune on packaged food. It's far more expensive than what we spend on organic fruits and vegetables.
Absolutely.
You'd be surprised what you get for $100 worth of packaged food versus $100 worth of organic fruits and vegetables.
Let interject a little bit, just to give you an idea. We have access here to an organic distribution. Our neighbors is distributing food from local farmers. And it's called Abundant Harvest. And you can go online, check it out. They distribute actually all across Southern and Central California.
And Southern. They deliver Pasadena. So.
And so we I mean, my wife, my sweetie pie here, because she handles the whole food system at home. We buy $25, a box of $25 of explain.
Yeah, what they do is it's seasonal food because obviously they're going to sell you the best of their harvest for that week. It's fresh from the farm, and so it's going to be seasonal. So in the summer, you get all the lettuces and tomatoes and zucchinis and a lot of different summer fruits, the peaches and the plums and all that stuff. And then in the fall and winter, you're getting a lot of root vegetables, pumpkins,
Turnips,
rutabaga, turnips, potatoes and carrots and that kind of thing. So it's taught us how to eat seasonally. So that it really, your body does so much better eating that way than if you're eating summer foods in the winter. And it's forced me to look up recipes and learn how to take things like a rutabaga and make it taste good because it's a very weird looking vegetable.
And one of the farmer's wife,
yeah,
on the page that they give us, she gives us a recipe.
Yeah, we get a recipe every week, and you can go on.
Beautiful.
You can go online and they have a plethora of recipes that you can go in and find. They're all fabulous. She's an amazing cook. So it's an education process. And for most people, I was born in 1951 and the 50s was, after World War II, it was all about convenience, white bread that tasted like Kleenex, with peanut butter and jelly on it for the kids and everything. The vegetables came out of a can, the little frozen dinners came out and everything was, we were told as a society, hey, you're busy. You don't have time to cook and deal with all that. Say, here, how do you handle a hungry man with a man handler? And you throw something into the oven, which then became the microwave, and bing, in 10 minutes it's dinner. Whereas I spend 2 hours preparing,
lovingly
a dinner, and
a lot of fun,
and enjoying it, and just smelling the wonderful, clean vegetables and fruits that I'm working with, and it's a different mindset that they did. They wanted us to buy those products. Absolutely. Because those corporations want to control the population through their food. I mean, it's the food, water, air, everything.
It's like Wonder Bread. It's a wonder, they call it bread.
Inversion. Wonder Bread. Inversion.
Yeah. Well, I want to move on to something related directly to what you're talking about. And that is strangely related to the massive effect of Big Pharma on the health of Americans and also the food industry's effects and millions throughout the world is the effect of a similar type of promotion that energizes Big Pharma's effect on our political life. That is the effect of what we started with as a tiny little box that managed to put out flickering black and white pictures, but now lives in some people's houses, a large, multicolored curved screen with crystal clear images, sometimes in 3D with quadraphonic sound, and serves as a vehicle for gaming experiences, action-packed films, special effects, and high-powered news and commentary blasting out messages 24 hours a day. The problem with this wonderful the problem with this wonderful device is that it's used for lulling our citizens into hypnotic sleep. It is called television, and its impact on millions of people wonderfully extracts them from political reality. Before we discuss this, let's hear a song that you guys wrote about it called Television.
The remote, the gentleman used, and then your box telling you what to buy. Television, television, there must be a way out of this. Television, television, another life falling out of grace. You're hypnotized, so why do you sleep at night? Your brain is fried and waits for a fight. Alright, okay. You wanna watch your favorite sports, but it fits you commercial spots. Making the deal, your time for your cash, not bad. Television, television, there must be a way out of this. Television, television, another life falling out of grace. Television, television, there must be a way out of this. Television, television, another life falling out of grace. One day you'll catch yourself in the mirror, and you won't dream what you do all this for. Your freedom is gone, but you try to beat them. Unless you cut them off, you're a slave to the system. So you get slim for a chip. You drive everywhere, you run out of gas. They don't care, they got your cash. You're like a robot, buying this or that. Television, television, there must be a way out of this. Television, television, another life falling out of grace. Television, television, there must be a way out of this. Television, television, another life falling out of grace. Out of grace. Out of grace, 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 out of grace.
Obviously, you have a strong feeling about television. How do you feel about its impact, and how would you say its impact actually works?
Number one in the world, the most powerful mind control machine ever built. Number one, nothing equals television as far as mind control is concerned. It's the number one. Number two, music.
Yeah.
Music being the entertainment of choice around the world, because there's a lot of population who don't have television, or, China, South America, field workers, but they always have. Music is the most natural and the most used form of entertainment. So in the modern world, television has developed into definitely, and scientifically engineered and developed to mind control human beings.
They have worked very diligently on finding just the perfect flicker rate. They have experiments in government experiments with monkeys where they're just with this flashing light all the time and figuring out the brainwave patterns and how to get them into a state of compliance and what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a neutrality, where you're just in this soup of vibration and information that you're taking in, very deeply as truth and reality when it's all inverted and lies. And that's how they have managed to mind control the entire population and divided us into these little groups. And each group mind has its own belief system that pits us against another group with their belief system.
It's brilliantly done. Absolutely brilliant.
And it all comes through television. All comes through television.
The sophistication behind this technology that the public at large just gobbles like, oh, it's so fun, man, check this out, it's so cool. It's all, I don't have words for it because we haven't watched television for, how long for you?
Oh, for me, it's been 15 years.
Yeah, for me, 11. We don't have television in our home. This is because we recognize that this is the tool that invades your privacy, invades your individuality, invades and controls your thinking. You see, if you don't watch television, what do we do every day without television? We have time to talk. We write music, we read, we write, we research, we get informed. We sleep well, we love well, we're in good health. I'm never sick, we're never sick. I don't use my insurance. We don't use any healthcare and nothing. We live a very simple, off the grid, off the flicker rate type of life. And we are still healthy, vibrant, creative, loving, taking risks. We're still, pretty good. And I weigh 87 pounds, and you are 120?
128.
128. Let's say 125. Okay. We are in that range, and I'm 61, and she's 65, and no TV, no packaged food.
So people, we are being forced in a direction away from reaching our potential as human beings. We're being pushed to take ourselves down several notches rather than lift us up several notches. But if you understand it, we each as individuals have the power to choose
the choice,
for ourselves. But again, it's convenience, and you watch TV and it's like, well, get your kids this cereal and buy this thing and this pudding, and you just open the package, add water and stir. And so that's what people do.
Well, right now I'm going to say something that's a little bit out of sync because I'm going to use it. Because we really, the timing of this is peculiar, as usual. But I'm going to just say this. Let's take a short break from our discussion of television and musical programming to hear one of Zave's wonderfully mellow and nurturing instrumentals called Bolero Waltz. In our first show, Who's Minding the Planet, we spoke a bit about the covert ways of surveillance of the press has affected our freedom of the press and dashed any hope of transparency of government. But how about its effect on the private citizen? I believe that the current claim of the government is that under the so-called Freedom Act, phone companies still collect and store phone records, but they are not fed to the intelligence agencies unless they go through the FISA court, which is, of course, highly secretive. Other so-called surveillance programs authorized under the Patriot Act have been shut down as well. Still, to be honest with you, almost everyone I talk to still believes that American citizens are under surveillance. And with the immense history of lying and deception about these programs, the psychological weight of being under surveillance constantly still weighs on Americans. And why, given that history, should we trust whatever we're told?
Exactly. We shouldn't trust what we're told. And, unfortunately, the bulk of the population does. But yes, it's a real problem. And
if you lose your privacy, even if it's just the sense of your privacy being taken away or being controlled, you lose your personal freedom.
I certainly feel that loss. I feel like my life changed when I realized what was being done. I grew up, I must have read 1984 5 times when I was a kid.
You are an elite thinker.
And so that story horrified me, and the end of it brought me close to tears. You remember the end of it?
I haven't read it.
Well, after he's tortured he's finally been captured. He's been a rebel. He's tortured, and his hair is falling out, and his body is really in bad shape. And then you can imagine a camera closing in on him, and the final words are, "He loved Big Brother."
You end up loving your jailer.
Yeah.
This is the so-called Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. It's just so sad what happens, how they manipulate this guy and utterly destroy him. And it so much falls in with the kind of psychology we were talking about.
We are in it.
And yes, well, it's gone beyond what even he was saying. Because you'd walk in a room, you could kind of hide from the telescreen. Now you're telling us that it's in air conditioners and light bulbs and so forth. I don't know the truth of how comprehensive it is, but I do know that if my emails and phone calls are being monitored, that is enough to make me feel completely under some kind of surveillance. But let's take a little break now and listen to the lighter side of Zave Nathan's instrumentals. Tell us a little about Silk Ribbon.
I was looking for a different structure, writing for television, because I wrote this for a television publisher. The way you cut music for image is different. If you have, depends on the scene, depends on the medium. If it's television, it's different than movies, it's different than internet. Mm-hmm. There are formulas of how you cut the music in. When you edit a movie and you put music behind it, you have what we call transition scenes. For instance, because you're on the radio, I will explain roughly how it works so your listener can mentally understand. You will have a scene cutting from a gas station and into where you pay for your gas, into the little shop. So there's 2 different scenes. You're going to see the car coming in towards the pumps, park, a guy come out and walk into the payer where he's going to pay. And in this action, the director wants to show the viewer that the action of the car coming in, the guy coming out and paying, something happens in the cashier's place and then comes out again and pump his gas. We all go through this at least 3 times a week. So you will have, the director will say, well, Zave, the car's coming in. Okay, I got that. So we're going to get, he's going to park and stop the car. Then you have an observation point. Then you have a second action when he leaves to go pay. So you follow the guy, there's a different action there. Then when it's filmed from inside the cashier's place, there's another energy there. So all of these are transiting from one scene to the other. They need music to emphasize these trends, these transitions. So I wanted to do a track with 3 different versions that you can cut in, and it's easy for the editor to bring the beginning of the part, which is just 8 bars, and use it for another scene, or use it to feed into another situation, then you have the second part of the track that you can mix into. So the idea was to give my publisher one track that he cut in 3 different sections, and they all interact with each other musically.
Okay.
It's easy for the mixer to take the first part, the second part, or the third. Or for credits, you take the whole minute and a half or minute 20, and you put it into the credits because musically they all fit together. And they keep the identity of the music for the whole section. That was the idea.
Oh, very interesting. Let's go play Silk Rhythm. Another disturbing aspect of our present culture is falling into the pit of brutality equal in many ways to the Inquisition, the behavior of the Nazis and the Japanese during World War II, and other medieval practices which disrespect the rights of man. To indulge in torture was to break the rules of the Geneva Convention and several torture treaties, as well as the spirit and law of the Eighth Amendment in the Bill of Rights. Here's what George Washington said about torture in regards to the treatment of prisoners. Treat them with humanity and let them have no reason to complain of our copying the brutal example of the British Army in their treatment of our unfortunate brethren who have fallen into their hands. His concern for this matter was so intense that he further charged the Northern Expeditionary Force on September 14, 1775 with this: "Should any American soldier be so base and infamous as to injure any prisoner, I do most earnestly enjoin you to bring him to such severe and exemplary punishment as the enormity of the crime may require. Should it extend to death itself, it will not be disproportional to its guilt at such a time and in such a cause, for by such conduct they bring shame, disgrace, and ruin to themselves and their country." George Washington, who was in charge of the Northern Expeditionary Force on September 14th, as I said, 1775. Some advocates of torture say that its use is some kind of threat to the enemy. But to others, including myself, torture is an invitation to the enemy to recruit more followers. Here's a quote from an anti-war blog by Scott Horton. In the worst of times, quote, "When foreign troops literally occupied American soil, torturing and murdering American patriots," end quote, "and few believed that the cause of the revolution should ultimately win against the might of the British Empire, our first commander-in-chief of the USA set the precedent that this society is to lead even our enemies by benevolent sympathy of our example. To win the war against the occupying army of redcoats, the American revolutionaries needed right on their side, and it worked. Many of the German Hessians, in fact, joined the revolutionaries in their fight against the English and stayed here in America to be free when the war was won. Must we abandon this legacy? Is it already too late to reclaim it?" This was written in 2007. By the way, and the United States, whether truly following it or not, has reversed its view on enhanced interrogation, but now there are cries to bring it back. Here's the problem as I see it. Remember, Threshold is basically a spiritual program which represents my point of view, and not necessarily those of my guests. I think that one of the tricks of whatever and whoever is driving us towards a security state is to create a certain us-them attitude towards whatever we conceive to be the enemy. The problem of this, from a spiritual point of view, is that everyone is connected, conscious or not, to the presence of God, and therefore they need to be looked at in the same way as God looks at them. This is only possible to do if one connects with the divine presence, called the Shekinah in Judaism, the kingdom of God in Christianity, and Fana by Sufi mystics in the Islamic faith. One modern interpreter of ancient mysticism, who recently deceased, Wayne Dyer, calls our consciousness of this state being in spirit. To reach this point of contact can take decades or sometimes perhaps a matter of minutes. Any understanding of this idea took me decades myself, and I'm sure I'm only at the beginning of my journey. Still, I believe that the farther we descend into the brutal treatment of prisoners, break our treaties in the Geneva Convention by speaking about our prisoners as enemy combatants instead of prisoners of war, the farther we descend away from the point of view harmonious with the state, and we fall into karmic realm of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which means as we sow, we shall reap. What is the role of spirituality in preventing us from descending to a level of animal predatorship, which is so prevalent in the actions of ISIS in the Middle East?
In war, there is a sense of nobility. When you have a country like, let's say France during the revolution, or before the revolution, if you want, same era, 1775, our revolution was 1789. So in the same demise of Louis XVI, we had the same kind of anger and revolutionary spirit. People have enough. They won't accept this anymore. Forget it. There's no other way than going down to the streets and taking our power back and having enough courage to accept death for freedom. To get to this level, you have to have a lot of balls. You have to have a lot of courage to go, you know what, sweetie pie, I love you very much, my son, my daughter, my wife, but I'm going to take my little musket with my buddies over here, and we're going to fight the guys on the other side of the line. I don't know if I will ever see you again, but I love you, and if I come back, we're going to have a better life. I mean, this is a very simple explanation, but when it comes down to it, at 7 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes, this is what you do. And if you keep the nobility of your war, you will keep the respect of the victory or the respect of the one that will lose. There is still a nobility when you respect your enemy. This is the terms that the Geneva Conventions were written under. Now, when you deal with ISIS, this is a whole different system of war. First of all, this is not declared war. Second of all, it's very cowardly because they use bombs and they use their weapons against people that have no weaponry. So you cannot compare the respect of war, the respect of prisoners, and what comes from that conflict.
Yes, you can. Sure you can. The way the Japanese treated the American prisoners of war is not that all that different. And the way the Nazis treated, all kinds of people is certainly very, very similar. And we did not descend as in terms of our official policies to that level.
When you use brutality without respect, you create vengeance, a blind vengeance. This is emotionally how human beings react.
That's emotionally how human beings maybe react instinctively, but that is not the way they react if they are in touch with their inner presence. It is not the way they react. It's the opposite of the way they react, because to actually love your enemy, as Jesus spoke of it, but many other people spoke of it, is, yes, it is not empowered by a normal, what we call a normal state of consciousness, but it is empowered by being in another state. And that state is of all importance because that is part of the way that we can probably win over these predators that are controlling the planet, because we need the power of manifestation that comes along with it.
As long as we have enough mass of awareness to fight it, yes.
Yes, but even so, within ourselves, because people. What happens to people in the seeds of repression and war can be highly different from one person than the next.
Now, when you talk about war, what is war?
Well, I mean, are you looking for a constitutional answer, or are you looking for a more generic answer?
What I'm getting at is the war is never humans against humans. It's never, oh my God, 63 million French people want to fight against 62 million German people because we hate your guts. This is not true. This is not at all what happens. What happens is the leader of France is looking at the leader of Germany and say, what? I'm going to kick your ass, motherfucker, right? So they don't do this face to face. They hire military forces for pissing contest. And they have a way to control the emotional mind of the citizens to create the patriotism to fight against the enemy that didn't do anything to me. If I go to Germany during World War II, or if Germans come to France and they say, you're French and we are invading you and we're going to kill you. And the French people go, why? Because Hitler had decided to take over France. And de Gaulle is like, what the heck is happening here? And it's never a race against another race. It's always activated by the leaders. It's a leader against the leader. It's a complete fallacy. It's activation of the defense mechanism, the emotional response to threat that human animals and even animals have in their DNA. This is how we react. So they are called third-party agitator, and this is how it works. For instance, Johnny, we will have a common person who knows both of us. Let's call him Henry. Henry knows you, Henry knows me. And he wants us to fight. So as a third-party agitator is going to go and talk to you and say, hey, Johnny, what are you doing Saturday? I was driving in the neighborhood. Maybe I can stop by and take you to dinner, And so you say, sure, no problem. And during the discussion, he says, oh, Xavier, yeah. Well, you know what he told me? And you're going to go, what? Well, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say that, but he told me that you guys have issues and stuff and that he wants to kick your ass. Now, how would you feel about that situation when you hear that from Henry? You go, what? I don't believe that. And he leaves it at that. Then he comes and says, hey, Xavier, wonderful. I was in the neighborhood. What's up with you? Well, what won't we get together? And during the discussion, he says, oh, I heard that you're friends with Johnny, right? I go, yeah. Well, I don't know if I can say that, but I was discussing with him and we were talking about you. And you know what? And I said, what? He wants to kick your ass. But don't tell him I told you. I just, So at that point, he removes himself from the equation. And from this information, I am afraid of you and you're afraid of me. He is an instigator. And once you have a tension built up like this between two entities, you just bring a spark, which is he's going to give you a machine gun that you pay for. He's going to sell me a machine gun. So at that point, he sold 2 machine guns and we got to kill each other.
Well, I think that that's true in some cases, but in other cases, you have countries like Nazi Germany invading Poland in a matter of days. And other countries too. They just invaded them. They didn't have a chance to summon up, sell arms. No one was selling arms to both sides. They were just, they were selling them to the Nazis for sure.
Well, the Nazis, 1932, correct?
As far as I know, approximately. It wasn't very long. I mean, it was like around 7 years before our whole war situation started, I mean, the war in Europe started in 1941. You have the Japanese attacking us, and you can definitely say there were third parties involved in some of this, undoubtedly. But part of it was just pure aggression on one side without any chance of developing patriotism on the other side. So there are different kinds of cases. I'd like to go on to something related to this in our own country, if that's all right. The prolonged exercise of Jade Helm in Texas and other neighboring states brought about a chill to many observers concerned about the violations of posse comitatus, a doctrine which prohibits the military, particularly the Army and the Air Force, illegally from exercising police functions in the United States. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, ordered the National Guard to monitor these exercises, fearing they would be violating our domestic rights as citizens. Special forces trained in assassinations and extractions were a component of this exercise, which was conducted on the ground with people in both civilian clothes and military uniforms. Is this a prelude to developing a standing army to frighten our populations into submission to an ever-encroaching restriction of personal freedom?
Okay, now Governor Abbott did what he did, and then what happened?
They still had it, as far as I know.
Of course, it does not matter. Nothing matters. Nothing matters. They do what they do, and they give us the illusion that we can vote yes or no on whatever they do. Whatever they want to do, they are doing. It does not matter if we are against or for. It doesn't matter.
Well, I don't see how you can say that we're going to take action or do something if you have that sort of defeatist attitude.
Well, if you are the governor and the military goes, well, we're going to go to Texas and do Jade Helm. And he goes, what the hell is Jade Helm? Well, it's training in the streets, to help to train into civilization. Why? Or because whatever excuse, there's always a good reason, because the minds behind them are extremely smart people. So the reasons that are exposed for us to accept is always to protect us, to help us. So, and in this specific situation, we are bombarded with images of civilian and military from everywhere in the world. So having it in America, it gets the public used to having military
It's
in
a
the
form of conditioning.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that it's a form of conditioning, and I believe it's true that he couldn't really do anything about it anyway unless he did something extraordinary. But nonetheless, a lot of people are alarmed by it, and I think a lot of people are not willing to accept this kind of violation of our independence. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because could I have predicted what would have happened that helped stop the war in Vietnam, which was that giant march in Washington, or the way the civil rights movement actually came down, or the way the occupation movement didn't do anything except get people arrested. But there are people, and there is a will among some of them to do something. Well, let's go on for a second. If we were comparing our current history to Nazi Germany, I would say it would be considerably somewhat after the Reichstag fire, a false flag where the Nazis organized the terrorist action against their own parliament, resulting them in seeking the protection of Hitler and his Nazi movement. Shortly after Hitler took power, he began the process of invading other countries under different pretexts. I believe the German people were as asleep as many Americans are, and although the progress of the Nazi takeover was rather fast as regards the short number of years it took to get to World War II, the German people complied without too much thinking as one step followed another until the total population was under control. For me, coping with these obvious encroachments on liberty and envisioning the possibility of a more tangible loss of liberty under the threat of violence, imprisonment, or enforced disappearance weighs heavily on me, especially since I forced myself to study it. Since you're highly involved with watching and evaluating these type of attacks on our liberty and future, how do you cope personally with this? How do you cope personally with the nightmare world that we've been discussing in this program?
Well, it's very tough on an emotional level. Because there's only so much one person can do. And until we unite, until more people understand, and they aren't waking up and they aren't understanding. So, there's a lot of defeatist kind of energy involved with trying to balance that with hope. For us, we cope by keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening because we very much want to know. And we create our own safety bubble by, preparing with having extra food in case of, civil unrest and maybe food won't be delivered to the stores. And, it may get really bad the way we've seen it happen in many other countries over the years. We have love in our lives. We take care of what's in our little bubble. And, we don't participate in supporting the things in our government that we are against. It's like when they say you vote with your dollars and where you put your attention. For instance, I don't have medical insurance. I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't care what they try to tax me because I didn't get it. I have my Medicare and that's free and that's fine.
Yeah, that's it. Me too.
But I don't have, no, you have Medi-Cal.
Oh, Medi-Cal. Oh.
And I just refuse to participate in their corruption. So I think that's really all an individual can do is you make your choice to either go along with their program or go along with your own program.
I tell you, for me, I don't like to use this word too much because it's stereotyped, but I have to meditate. I have to put myself, I have to intentionally leave my sort of the what would I call it? Just the ordinary state of being where you're worried about everything and you're doing certain things and you get engrossed in certain things. I need to leave this state. And in that other state, I can see again. It's like climbing above the clouds and looking down. And also it's filled with a lot of peace and brightness. Well, unfortunately, the time has come to end our latest edition of Threshold. Thank you so much, Zave and Blaze. Fantastic conversation. We will now go out on an optimistic note with one of Zave's songs called I Believe.
And we mustn't forsake and forget who we are, as our future and past are written in the stars. Every day of our lives we should pray to the sky. We are one, we are love, you and I.
Believe. We each are the stewards of our planet Earth, for all that it is and for all that it's worth. Our mission is clear and it is human's fate to take back the keys to the gate. We're living again through the great fall of Rome, and we really don't know if we'll ever get home. It's a long road ahead, but I know where to start. Stay strong and keep love in our hearts. And we mustn't forsake or forget who we are, as our future and past are written in the stars. Every day of our life we should pray to the sky. We are one, we are love, you and I. When we finally unite and live here in peace, then the greed and the wars and corruption will cease. But we will see much loss, and for that we will grieve. In the end it is love we'll receive. And we mustn't forsake or forget who we are, as our future and past are written in the stars. Every day of our life we should pray to the sky. We are one, we are love, you and I. When we create the magic in the air, you look and feel the crowd around you. And when the wavelength grows stronger between us, don't be afraid to let it go. And we mustn't forsake, forget who we are, as our future and past are written in the stars. Every day of our life we should pray to the sky. We are one, we are love, you and I. And we mustn't forsake and